Brother Gerald Kwesiga from Rwanda. I'm here to share with you about the hero of faith, Joseph. I'll pick out some scenarios where Joseph was faithful to God, and then later I'll discuss on how we can pick or learn from his faith as Christians today. Joseph was one of the 11 sons of Jacob, and he was the first son born to Jacob's second wife, Rachel. He was favored by his father, where we find him being given some favor like a very good garment. So Joseph was sold into slavery because of his brethren didn't like him. They were not happy with the favors he got from their father. And despite being sold into slavery, he remained faithful and diligent. So he was sold and was put in Potiphar's home, but he remained faithful, where we see he was even tempted by the wife of Potiphar, but he said, my master has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. So how then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God? So this is one of the ways he remained faithful, that if he did what the wife of Potiphar requested, he would have sinned against God. Then he was put into prison, and there Joseph remained faithful to God. And when he was interpreting the dreams, we see that he did not one time say, I am the one interpreting them. Joseph said to them, do not interpretations are from God. So he started interpreting the dreams, but compliments were given to God. So he was faithful even in the prison. Joseph rose to power, and interpreting the Pharaoh's dreams also, he told him that I'm not the one interpreting the dreams, but God is the one who interprets the dreams. Joseph was also faithful when he received his brethren from to Egypt, where Joseph demonstrated forgiveness and recognized God's sovereignty and plan in his life. So Joseph had a chance of maybe doing whatever they did for him, but for him he said, it is God who sent me before you to prepare and preserve you for this situation. And what can we learn from all this that happened to Joseph? We learn that we need to trust in God's providence all the time. Joseph trusted that God was working out his divine plan even in the midst of adversity. So Joseph was not distressed and was not angry with him being sold, because it was to save lives that God sent him to do. So we need to trust God and his providence. We need to be resilient in adversity. So even if we face trials, and including betrayals, we need to be resilient and know that God is always on our side, as Joseph did. We need to have integrity and be faithful in all the temptations. Joseph demonstrated integrity and faithfulness to God when he was tempted by Potiphar's wife. He did not succumb to the demands, because integrity was on his side. We need to be faithful in our service. Wherever we serve, we are supposed to be faithful as Joseph was. He was faithful in every situation. He found himself in whether as a servant in Potiphar's house or as a prisoner in Egypt. So Joseph was At that time he would have messed up, but he remained faithful. And if we remain faithful from the time we are in charge of the household of faith, we can be blessed by the Lord as Joseph did. Forgiveness and reconciliation. We find that this was one of the characters of Joseph. He was able to forgive. Joseph chose to forgive his brothers and sought reconciliation, not reflecting on what they did. So he was that character of forgiving, which is supposed to be one of our characters as the Christians. We need to recognize God's sovereignty. Joseph acknowledged God's sovereignty and the bigger picture of his divine plan, even in the midst of suffering and hardship. He told them, "You intended to harm me, but God intended for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." So it was God's plan, and he quickly learned that. So as brethren, we need to know the God's plan so that we can fit in it, that whatever comes against us, we are able to use it for God's purpose. We also need to keep enduring and to persevere in every situation, because situations will always come, they will always be bad on our side, but endurance and perseverance should be part of our daily service. We are surrounded by great crowds of things happening, but we should always throw off everything that hinders and prevents us from getting to God. So Joseph was enduring and he persevered. Remember, when he was in prison, he was left in prison for some time before joining the life with the Pharaoh. We should always be faithful in all the trials. Joseph's life story is a testament of God's faithfulness in the midst of trials and suffering. So we need to know that this lesson from Joseph's faith can inspire and encourage Christians to trust in God's providence. And we need to know that if we are children of God, we are the heirs of God and joint heirs with Christ. So this story about Joseph needs to remind us of who we are. And if we are so, we need to suffer with him, and we may be also be glorified with him together. We need not to fear, we as a little flock, for it is our Father's good pleasure to give us the kingdom. And if we remain faithful to him, that is when we can achieve that. He told us that if I go and I prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you into myself. So this is one of the great promises, precious promises he gave us. And we achieve that when we remain faithful. If we are not faithful, we may not reach to that final destination, which we are all focusing on. And whom that overcomes, he said, will I grant to sit with me in my throne, even as I also overcome and I sit with my Father in his throne. So we are preparing ourselves to join him and sit with him on the throne. Therefore, brethren, give diligence to make your calling and election sure, for if we do so, we shall never fall. The Lord should deliver us from every evil one, and will preserve us in heavenly kingdom to the throne. So Joseph should work as one of the important heroes of faith to all Christians. And we find Joseph, in his story, we don't find many bad side of him. He was always on the side of faith and was the greatest is forgiving the brethren, and at the same time, when they came to see him at his level as a great person whom the Pharaoh had chosen to be in charge of Egypt, they came looking for food. He gave them the food. After, he even returned the money they had brought to him. So that one shows that if we follow the example of Joseph, to me, the example of Joseph is one of the concrete stories to guide the Christians, and it is one of the stories which we should follow and be able to use in order to win the race which we are running. Remember, we are running a race which is not easy, and we should focus on the final prize. And so many things will happen on us from both sides, from family, from sometimes brethren can also be part of the challenges we are having. But what is important is to know that God is on our side. We should always focus, we should always pray, we should always study and make our election sure, so that whatever comes we are aware. We are supposed to keep watching and know that whatever comes, it is because that God wants us to go through that. So this shows that whatever is bad on our side, it should not discourage. It should not discourage us, because we can use it for the good of our glorification in the kingdom that we are all looking for. So faith here that Joseph shows is the faith which is very, very wonderful to Christians, and we are able to use it in order to be able to join the kingdom. We find that when Joseph was about to die, he told his brethren, because of faith, that Joseph knew the promise which God had given to Abraham, and he was able to recall that at one time he would go back to his promised land, and he told his brethren that Joseph, that take my bones with them to leave Egypt, and he was hopeful that the bones would be taken. We get it from Genesis and say, Joseph said to his brothers, I am about to die, but God will surely come to your aid and take you out from this land. So Joseph was not sure whether God would come and pick his brethren from Egypt, because they were working, they were there, but it was not their land. But through faith, he had to be able to come. Brethren, these scriptures highlight Joseph's unwavering faithfulness to God throughout his life. Even in the face of adversity, temptation, and betrayal, we need to be aware that God is always on our side if we remain faithful. Joseph consistently acknowledged God's sovereignty, trusted in his providence. We see it in many situations where he was facing his challenges, in both with his brethren, then as a Potiphar servant, then in prison, then even in the office as one of the great people in Egypt, when he was put in charge of making sure that famine does not affect Egypt. So he remained obedient to his commandments, and serving as a powerful example of faith and integrity to believers today. So thank you for listening, and now ready to receive your questions and supplements.
Thank you, Brother Gerald. Now it's time to ask Brother Gerald a question on his presentation. Question, please. Question.
Thank you, Brother Gerald, for the sharing about the great man Joseph, the time of the Messiah. I want to know, because you have given us an example, how did his going to prison work the will of God in his life? How could you talk about that? He went to the prison, not his will. How did it work? To be a will of God for him to go to prison.
Yeah, thank you, brother. Passing through prison is not easy. And Joseph, God made him pass there in order to reach at the level of joining the office, because it was also part of the experience to demonstrate to the prisoners that he can to show them his capability. Then later he was elevated. So God has his way of doing things. So he decided to make him go through that situation, maybe get some experience of suffering. Then he can also be able to forgive others, because it was God's plan, and someone who has suffered can easily forgive, and I think Joseph benefited from that.
Thank you very much. And this is my question.
Yes.
We've been learning about the heroes of faith, and previously we learned about Samson, and it's a picture of the church. Just minutes, we just learned about Moses, who is the mediator between the Jews and God. Joseph is a picture of Christ. Please, can you just give us 2 instances of his narration that typify him as Christ?
First of all, one of them is forgiving. Joseph was able to forgive, as Christ can forgive us our sins. Another situation is Joseph was prepared Egypt during famine, then prepared them for the imprinted. And in imprinted, he was the one who was like an overall. We see Pharaoh was like the ceremonial ruler of Egypt, but in actual sense, Joseph was the one ruling. So Christ also, during the restitution period, is the one to rule, as Joseph was ruling. You asked me for 2 situations there. I repeat the question. How should I relate it to Joseph? No, it's not Joseph. Okay. I say it's for Moses. It's for Brother Moses. I don't know if you can get it for it's not for Joseph, actually. Okay.
Please, the question should be directed to Joseph. To everything should be directed. Any question you are directing to Gerald should be on the topic which he just offered to us. Thank you.
Presentation. And one of the things that I was thinking about concerning Joseph was the trigger, insofar as his brothers causing him to be taken captive. And just think of that from a natural human standpoint, that your own family members are the trigger of your being captured, being taken away. That's pretty horrible. But beyond that, and we know that there was a famine in the land, and his brethren came back, and what he did, he forgave them. He forgave them. And so when I think about our lives, and the doctrine of forgiveness. And I'm not sure how often when we think about the doctrine of forgiveness, we think about Joseph. Maybe I should a bit more. But as we connect this doctrine of forgiveness to Joseph's experiences, is there anything that you could share along that line as to how important that is and what we might, how we might become better rightly exercised through forgiving one another? Because we're all in the flesh, and we all go through experiences, and we may say or do something to someone that another becomes offended by. It may very well happen at this convention. Okay, and so the question is, how can we take better use or make better use of this principle of forgiveness in our lives as Joseph did with his brother? Thank you.
Thank you, brother. Sometimes, if anyone or someone does something bad to us, it is normal to get angry, and but the anger should not extend for so long, and that one will help us to always forgive. Forgiving as brethren is a must. And we are told to always go back before we come to God. We go back and reconcile with the brethren. So at first Joseph was angry, and there was, when you read the story in full, he was able even to a bit torture them. I can use the word because of not getting a better word, because he said, leave one of your brothers here, go back. So they had to argue with him that please don't, because our father is very old, he cannot be happy with us. So, but later he quickly came to realize that it was not good. It was maybe not good to first mistreat them like that. So, forgiving as Joseph did, we may get challenges and get angry to our friends or our brethren, but we should always quickly come back and forgive as we see Joseph did. He did not remain with the anger. He quickly came and realized that, oh, it is good, this is the time to reconcile and reveal myself to them as we see him. I don't know whether I'm trying to attempt it. Thank you.
The answer to the question that my brother asked, I am not clear.
Yes, we repeat the question.
The question is, how do you know that it's the will of God? Then, my own answer there is, I'm sure that it's the will of God. Because first of all, Joseph, dreamed of being the leader of his brethren, even though his father, that they worship him. The second dream that he dreamed,
yes,
before they hate him more.
Yes.
Then, this thing cannot fulfill if he was not put into prison.
Yes.
It was in the prison that he interpreted the dream of the servant of Pharaoh. Then that is what elevated him to the position of prime minister.
Yeah, and I said that was God's arrangement to go through the prison and reach at the position. So that's, thank you for your clarification.
Brother Gerald. So I just want to add a point. Even without becoming a new creation or acquiring a new mindset, Joseph was able to forgive his brothers once he was elevated to a higher position. So we need to think about this in our lives. We being as a new creation, having a new mind, we should examine ourselves whether we are able to forgive our brothers when they hurt us or when they hate us. Because actually we have... So actually God has given us the privilege to receive the higher blessings in His kingdom, to become the church class. But they was not granted with that privilege, so we should examine our lives.
The concluding statement is not happy. But I don't know the question now because
it was not a question, just
so it's one of the ancient qualities who will receive the reward, his own reward. Thank you.
We have less than 3 minutes to go. Any brother who wants to return a question?
Brother Gerald, I really appreciate your presentation. It's really nice, and it's a nice character that you took us, walked us through. So thank you for that. My question is with regard to whether forgiveness in the scriptures is conditional or non-conditional. Because with respect to Joseph, we see when his brothers come back into his life, he does take a period of time to see whether they are of a repentant heart. He doesn't immediately reveal himself. He does not say that I am the brother you sold. He does take one of them, accuses them of robbery. He asks them to bring back his younger brother. So there's a lot of that happens, and then he tries to see the attitude of his brothers, and then he reveals himself to them. So it feels like Joseph wanted to see whether his brothers had a repentant heart. Would they stand by if another brother was in trouble, and all of that before he forgave them. So if this was an example a hero of faith has set before us, is it the same principle that applies to us now that we're in the gospel age? Or is forgiveness something that we're supposed to unconditionally give out to anybody who does harm to us?
Yeah, thank you, sister, for this question. To the new creation, we should be ready to forgive all the time. Jesus was asked, how many times should I forgive someone who has wronged me? He said 70 times. And he said, always forgive, and to meet his conditional as the new creation. It is a must that
that goes without saying, that we have to forgive, and that's a privilege we have. My question was towards when do we forgive? Do we forgive if someone apologizes to us, or do we forgive them even if they don't apologize to us?
we should always be ready to forgive every time. Because weakness, someone may be naturally weak and is not ready to ask for forgiveness. But as a new creature, you should be prepared to forgive. Even Jesus said, leave them, they don't know what they are doing. So when he saw that God would punish them.
Thank you, Brother Gerald.